Hello and welcome back to Jess of the North. For my small family of 2 humans and 3 dogs, using something like a large pumpkin can be a little bit challenging. This variety that I'm using is Long Island cheese. This is the first year that I've used it from storage, and I was honestly really impressed with how well it held the moisture inside of it. And I'm basically treating this like you would a jack-o'-lantern. So I am removing the top, scooping out the seeds. I'll rinse those off and roast them later. Roasting pumpkin seeds isn't very complicated. You just rinse off any of the extra material that's on them, pat them dry, and pop them in the oven with some oil and a little bit of salt and pepper. If you prefer a particular seasoning flavor, feel free to mix it up, try something new. But other than that, my oven is preheating. I'll roast the pumpkin until it is tender to a fork, and then I'll let that cool. When it's time for the pumpkin to come out of the oven and come to room temperature, this is also the time that I'm taking out all of my baking ingredients. Today I'm making a pumpkin cake, and the recipe specifically called for eggs to be at room temperature. I will also be making dog treats, which also require eggs, so I took out enough for that as well. And then if I take out all my ingredients now, those are just waiting for me when everything else is ready. Once the pumpkin's cooled, I use an ice cream scoop, and I weighed out 15 ounces of pumpkin into a mixing bowl. If you haven't used an ice cream scoop before to remove a roasted squash type vegetable, then I would highly recommend that. I find it probably the easiest way to get all of that off of the rind. I was always taught to mix all of my wet ingredients together first. So here you see me put in the pumpkin, the eggs, and the oil. I start that on the mixer. And then I'll be putting in all of my dry ingredients into a separate bowl. My dry ingredients include flour, baking powder, baking soda, sugar, cinnamon, and salt. After trying the cake, I would also recommend adding something like nutmeg or allspice, whatever your normal preferences are for those. Then everything is mixed together and poured into a greased 9x13 pan and popped into my preheated oven, which was set for 350. The cake needed to bake for about 30 minutes, and I just tested to see if the cake was done by poking in a toothpick and seeing if it came out clean. The recipe I found for pumpkin cake suggested a cream cheese frosting, and while that is very good, I opted this time just to use honey. While the cake was baking, I began mixing all of the ingredients for the dog treats. Because of the large volume of pumpkin I had, I did go ahead and double the batch quantities. So I ended up using 6 cups of flour as a base, 4 eggs, and then the pumpkin was more moist than I expected after being in storage since the fall. So I could have done with much less water than the recipe called for. And I ended up kneading in much more flour into the dough to get the right consistency so that I could roll it flat and cut it into pieces. If you're in a hurry, I would recommend rolling it out and using something like a pizza cutter to cut strips into the appropriate size pieces you're looking for your pets. After mixing all those ingredients, I was left with 2 sandwich-sized bags of roasted pumpkin. For future baking purposes, I learned the hard way several years ago that rather than trying to put all of my roasted pumpkin into a freezer gallon size bag, portioning them into usable portions for later recipes, usually about 2 cups each, works a little bit better. And this is how I use a large pumpkin for my small family. If you've got another recipe that is tried and true for you and your family, leave that in the comments below. But thanks for coming along with me, and I'll catch you next time.